Imagine spending $100 billion to build a futuristic paradise. Glass towers, luxury malls, artificial islands, all sold as the next Singapore. Now, fast forward to today, half abandoned skyscrapers, empty roads echoing like a post apocalypse film set, and property owners who can't even find a Starbucks to cry in. Welcome to Forest City, Malaysia, where utopia turned into a $100 billion punchline. Here's the hook. Forest City was supposed to be the Dubai of Southeast Asia. Instead, it became the Atlantis of Southeast Asia, minus the mythology, minus the tourists, and plus a very real chance of literally sinking into the sea. Yes, some people don't just lose money in real estate, they lose the actual land. But let's slow down for the skeptics. Surely it can't be that bad, you say. Oh no, it's worse. Because Forest City isn't just a failed project. It's a living museum of every mistake in modern capitalism. Overfinancing by Chinese developers, weak local governance, ecological vandalism, and the small detail that nobody actually wanted to live there. Stick around, because in this video we'll walk through how a $100 billion dream became Asia's most expensive ghost story. By the end, you won't just question property investment in Malaysia, you'll question the entire idea of progress. Let's start with the basics. Who in their right mind thought it was a good idea to build a four-island megacity for 700,000 people in southern Malaysia? The answer, of course, is a Chinese developer with too much cash, a government desperate for investment, and consultants who are paid to say brilliant idea, no matter how insane it sounded. Forest City was launched with the kind of marketing you'd expect for a luxury perfume. Billboards of shiny skyscrapers, futuristic eco-cities, happy families on manicured lawns. They didn't sell homes, they sold dreams. And the dream was simple. Why live in boring Singapore when you can live next to Singapore for half the price? Now here's the first punchline. Most of the units were bought by wealthy Chinese investors who never even planned to live there. They just needed a place to park their money offshore, away from Beijing's capital controls. So you ended up with an entire city designed for residents that never had any residents. It was less community and more bank account with walls. Meanwhile, the Malaysian government nodded along like a waiter pretending to understand a wine list. They thought Forest City would create jobs, attract tourism, and magically turn Johor into a rival to Singapore. What they got instead was thousands of unsold apartments, a tourism industry that never materialized, and locals priced out of their own coastline. And then came the ecological cherry on top. Those man-made islands disrupted mangroves, fishing grounds, and natural coastal flows. Fishermen who used to pull in daily catches suddenly found themselves staring at dead waters. So yes, Forest City was not only a financial disaster, it was an environmental one too. In short, chapter 1 of this saga is simple. When developers, politicians, and investors all agree on a perfect plan, you should probably run in the opposite direction. Now, let's walk into Forest City today. Imagine arriving after a $100 billion hype campaign. What do you see? Towering glass condos, perfectly paved roads, and lush landscaping. Sounds nice, right? Until you realize there's no one there. No cars, no neighbors, no sound of life. Just the faint echo of your own footsteps, and the occasional security guard wondering why you're still looking around. Developers promised 700,000 residents. Do you know how many actually live there? Estimates range from a few thousand to, wait for it, barely a fraction of a Singapore HDB block. It's the only city where stray cats outnumber taxpayers. And the investors, most of them never moved in. These apartments were bought by wealthy Chinese citizens as safe deposit boxes for their money. But after Beijing tightened overseas investment, many units turned into dark, empty shells. Congratulations, you've just built Asia's largest furniture showroom with no buyers. Even the luxury lifestyle they promised collapsed before it began. The malls are half empty. The hotels that were supposed to attract global tourists closed. The golf course? A lonely stretch of grass where dreams went to retire early. It's like watching a Disneyland where Mickey Mouse quit on opening day. And here's the most poetic part. Forest City sits right across the water from Singapore. a nation that thrives on density, planning, and brutal efficiency. In Singapore, a single HDB flat has waiting lists longer than a Taylor Swift ticket queue. Meanwhile, across the causeway, Forest City drowns in oversupply. It's as if Singapore is mocking Malaysia every day. You built 4 islands for nothing, and I still have more demand than land. So what do you call a $100 billion city with no residents, no economy, and no future? Simple. The world's most expensive game of SimCity, played by people who forgot to click the population button. Here's the thing about megaprojects. When they succeed, every politician rushes to cut the ribbon. When they fail, suddenly nobody remembers holding the scissors. And Forest City? It's the ultimate political orphan, abandoned by both its parents, Malaysia and China. In the early days, Malaysian leaders boasted that Forest City would be a jewel of Johor, the economic engine of the future. Fast forward a few years, and now those same officials talk about it the way you talk about an ex you regret. Oh, Forest City? Yeah, we don't really keep in touch anymore. Meanwhile, over in Beijing, the developer Country Garden was once hailed as a national champion, a proud symbol of China's global expansion. Today, it's more like the embarrassing uncle at a wedding. Everyone pretends not to notice as he drinks too much and falls asleep at the table. With China's property sector in crisis, Beijing quietly stopped cheering and started whispering, maybe if we ignore it, nobody will notice we blew $100 billion on a sandcastle. And then came the real humiliation. Malaysia's former Prime Minister Mahathir openly criticised the project, saying it was nothing but a playground for rich foreigners and did nothing for locals. That's like a doctor telling you your baby is ugly and unhealthy, brutally honest, but impossible to argue against. Now the government faces a dilemma. Admit Forest City was a disaster, or keep pretending it's a long-term, visionary project that just needs more time. Spoiler alert, when a city designed for 700,000 people can't even fill a shopping mall, time isn't the solution, it's the executioner. So what do we have? A project too expensive to finish, too toxic to celebrate, and too embarrassing to cancel, which makes Forest City the geopolitical equivalent of that one relative everyone avoids at Lunar New Year. Still alive, still costly, but everyone secretly wishes it would just disappear. But to be clear, Forest City wasn't just numbers on a balance sheet. Real people got caught in this mess. Local Malaysians were told, this project will bring jobs, prosperity, and opportunity. What they got instead was dust, noise, and the sinking feeling that their own coastline had been sold off for someone else's fantasy. Start with the fishermen. For generations, Johor's waters fed families. Then along came the dredgers, dumping sand into the sea to build artificial islands. The mangroves, ripped out, fish stocks, collapsed. Imagine waking up one day to discover the ocean that once paid your bills is now a dead zone with a luxury condo sitting on top of it. Progress, they called it. Locals called it betrayal. Then there were the construction workers. Thousands hired, many from overseas, building towers that, ironically, they could never afford to live in. They worked under blistering heat, sometimes unpaid when the developer ran into cash flow problems. Their sweat built a city that would later stand empty, like a monument to their own exploitation. And let's not forget the small businesses in Johor who thought they'd strike gold. Restaurants, cafes, shops, all gearing up for the inevitable boom of wealthy new residents. Instead, they got empty tables, unpaid rents, and the crushing reality that the only people buying anything were journalists passing through to document the failure. But the cruelest joke? Ordinary Malaysians were priced out from the start. These homes weren't built for them, they were built for foreign investors. Locals were spectators in a game where the ball was money and the scoreboard was off limits. So when we talk about Forest City, don't just picture ghostly skyscrapers. Picture fishermen with empty nets. Picture waiters serving empty chairs. Picture an entire community promised the world and given nothing but glass towers filled with silence. Because in the end, Forest City isn't just a failed project. It's a lesson in how development without people isn't development at all. It's destruction dressed up in glossy brochures. If Forest City were just an isolated fiasco, we could laugh, roll our eyes, and move on. But the truth is uglier. Forest City is not a glitch. It's a feature of modern capitalism. It's what happens when money becomes the goal, not the tool. Think about it. Every sales pitch, every glossy brochure, every eco-city of the future claim, it was never really about building homes. It was about moving capital from one pocket to another. The skyscrapers weren't designed for families. They were designed for balance sheets. That's why so many units were sold to absentee investors. The buildings were never meant to breathe with life. They were meant to freeze wealth in concrete, like safety deposit boxes in the sky. But here's the blind spot. Cities without people aren't cities. They're mausoleums. And when you try to build a mausoleum the size of Singapore's population, you end up with a $100 billion cautionary tale. The warning isn't just for Malaysia. Look around the world. From empty luxury apartments in London to half-built towers in China to speculative condos in Dubai, Forest City is just the loudest example of a global sickness. Build first, ask questions later, and when it collapses, well, too bad, the consultants already cashed their checks. The irony? All this was wrapped in the language of sustainability and green living. Forest City even bragged about its smart city features, but how sustainable is a city when the only consistent residents are mosquitoes breeding in unused swimming pools? This is where the reflection bites. Forest City isn't just about bad planning. It's about what happens when we confuse speculation for progress. It's a mirror showing us how fragile the idea of development really is, how easily it slips into destruction when profit trumps people. And maybe that's why governments hate talking about it, because if Forest City is a failure, then so is the system that created it. Look through Forest City at sunset, and you'll understand the tragedy better than any spreadsheet. Towers glowing in the dying light, balconies with no furniture, streets so empty you can hear the ocean whispering. What were they thinking? It feels less like a city and more like a movie set for the end of civilization, except the budget wasn't Hollywood's $200 million. It was $100 billion. And this is the absurdity. Forest City was supposed to represent the future, futuristic design, green technology, luxury living. Instead, it represents the past, the same old story of greed, arrogance, and denial. The only smart thing about this smart city is how cleverly it managed to turn billions of dollars into empty glass boxes. Of course, the marketing machine keeps spinning. Every now and then, officials insist Forest City is still alive, still developing, still destined for greatness. It's the real estate version of Weekend at Bernie's. Prop up the corpse, put sunglasses on it, and hope nobody notices the smell. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Forest City is not alone. It's a warning of what happens when cities are built as investment schemes rather than communities, when governments chase foreign capital instead of local needs, when sustainability becomes a slogan instead of a practice. So, yes, Forest City is a ghost story, but not the kind you tell around a campfire. This one is written in concrete and steel, and it's still unfolding. The ghosts aren't supernatural. They're economic, political, human. Fishermen who lost their waters, families priced out of their own land, workers who built homes no one will ever live in. The saddest part? In 50 years, Forest City might literally sink into the sea. And if that happens, it won't even be remembered as a failure. It'll just vanish, swallowed by the ocean, erased like the promises that created it. So there you have it. Forest City. $100 billion, 4 islands, 700,000 planned residents, and still fewer people than a Singapore hawker centre at lunch hour. It was supposed to be a paradise of glass and steel, but it turned into a cautionary tale dressed as a luxury brochure, the Dubai of Southeast Asia. Please. More like the Atlantis of Southeast Asia, except instead of mystery, it's just bad debt and empty condos. And here's the part nobody likes to admit. Forest City isn't just Malaysia's problem. It's a mirror for all of us. London, Vancouver, Dubai, Shenzhen, you name it. Cities stuffed with ghost apartments that exist for speculation, not for people. Forest City just had the misfortune of being too obvious, too big, too impossible to hide. So now I'll leave you with the real question. Do you think Forest City is a one-off disaster, or is it the future of global real estate? Are we all building cities for people who will never come, or is this just a uniquely Malaysian tragedy? Drop your thoughts below, because the real ghost here isn't the empty towers, it's the silence when nobody talks about what this failure actually means. And remember, if you don't comment, you might just wake up tomorrow in your very own Forest City apartment, furnished only with regret.